Hey everybody, I'm PeanutButterGamer, and welcome to my list of the top 5 Harvest Moon games. Okay, I'll be honest, Harvest Moon is really not for everybody.
Oh boy! My turnips reached the 3rd level of their growth cycle!
That's actually more or less what I'm like in real life. But all that aside, Harvest Moon is a really fun game and can actually be incredibly addicting as well. That being said, there are also some really crappy Harvest Moon games. And that's why I'm here to give you my top 5 best games in the series. Just keep in mind that with this list, I'm going for the main games in the series, so in other words, no spin-offs like Rune Factory, for example. So without further ado, let's get this thing started.
Number 5. I'm starting off my list with the first game in the series, simply titled Harvest Moon. Although it was later ported to the Game Boy, it originally came out for the Super Nintendo in 1997. I'm mentioning this specifically because I feel it's a perfect example of the type of game that just doesn't age that well, or at least when compared to some of the more recent games. Don't get me wrong, it was a great game in its time, and it still is, but a lot of things have since been improved on. One of the biggest being the tool system. It gets pretty tedious to have to run back and forth from your barn in the field just to swap tools. And this may seem a bit nitpicky, but it also bugs me that you don't get a more detailed picture of characters when you're talking to them, like you do in the later Harvest Moon games. Also, while this may be true for just about every Harvest Moon game, both the dialogue and the translation is pretty terrible. Its name is... You Do It.
Why hello there, you do it?
Number 4. Now, if you're already a Harvest Moon fan, this may confuse or possibly even enrage you. But A Wonderful Life for the GameCube and PS2 really isn't my favorite installment in the series, as fun as it may be. I do, however, think it's one of the more unique games in the series. Most Harvest Moon games put a big focus on wooing your virtual hottie, but in A Wonderful Life, it's actually incredibly easy and takes only one in-game year. A large focus is instead put on your son, and it's very entertaining and, dare I say it, even cute, to interact with him and watch him grow over the years. But personally, the long, tedious process of trying to get your girl to like you is actually fun and rewarding, so it's disappointing to me that the process was so shallow in this version. But by far, my biggest complaint with the game is that most of the characters are incredibly boring and forgettable. Number 3. Here's another one that I know some people were expecting at number 1, Harvest Moon 64, obviously for the Nintendo 64. And even though it's not at my number 1, I can definitely see why a lot of people list this as their favorite game in the series. Unlike A Wonderful Life, most of the characters are funny and interesting. All of the festivals in this game are also really fun, and most even allow you to participate. The only real fault I have with the game is that, like the original Harvest Moon, it's very tedious to swap tools and items. While you don't have to go running back to your shed, you do have to pause and select what item you want every single time. This is a big deal because Harvest Moon is already naturally tedious as it is, so the inefficient item selecting just makes it even worse. Number 2. Whenever I get into a discussion about Harvest Moon, which, now that I think about it, I guess doesn't happen all that often, no one ever seems to bring up Magical Melody for the GameCube. And I have no idea why, because it is definitely one of the most solid entries in the series. Everything that you'd expect from a Harvest Moon game is back, and it all works really well, but it's the little things that the game adds that makes you want to continue playing. In Magical Melody, you have to save the Harvest Goddess. Big surprise. To do this, you collect what are known as musical notes. They're basically like little achievements you get for doing random things. It may seem a bit lame at first, but it's actually pretty funny. You also have a rival farmer named Jamie that you're in direct competition with. And she's a real jerk, so it makes you want to pwn her freaking face off. If you run out of room for farming, you can also purchase around 20 new plots of land. Not only does this encourage you to expand, it's also just fun to be a greedy jerk and own everything you possibly can. If all this isn't enough to convince you that Magical Melody is good, just watch this. If you didn't think that was funny, then just get out. Like, leave. Seriously. Number 1. Friends of Mineral Town is basically a Game Boy Advance port of Harvest Moon Back to Nature for the PlayStation 1. And that is honestly one of the biggest reasons it tops my list. It's a portable Harvest Moon game that's not lackluster. Let's face it, while a lot of the console Harvest Moon games are really fun, the series is just better suited for handhelds because of its pick-up-and-play nature. Sadly, most of the handheld versions just aren't that good. I'm looking at you, Island of Happiness. Stupid. And it certainly doesn't hurt that just about everything good about the series is nearly perfected in this version. The tool and item switching system is the best in the series. The farming is funner, easier, and more rewarding. The dating game works beautifully, and even the festivals are entertaining. I used to enjoy this game so much that I actually made notes for it. Now this is some seriously old school stuff. When it comes down to it, not only is Harvest Moon Friends of Mineral Town the best Harvest Moon game out there, it's one of the most fun and specifically addicting games of any genre ever created. And that is really saying something.